Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Join it and see if you come in. Robertson Road rezoning configuration. Again, we had a small feedback. Give us just a second.
Oh, yeah. Are we good now?
Yes, you should be good.
We're good? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, do you
Thank
have
you,
anything for
sir.
meeting follow-up?
Yes, absolutely. For those who may not have been following this conversation, that may be watching at home, we're about to put up the parcel in question. We're all familiar with it, Robertson Road, Trevitt Lane. We've talked about a couple of configurations that might, more acutely, thank you, more acutely meet council's interests in moving forward with this potential transaction with the private sector. That's the original layout that you see here. The entangling difficulty with trying to sell it as is with respect to the PUD designation that it currently has. Our recommendation is that it change somehow. We've been going through a number of variations as to the way that could look and be configured. And to this point, council has been concerned, which is certainly very appropriate. The proposal that we would suggest at this point that would take away a lot of the crystal ball aspect of what I think has been a struggle for most in this discussion would be to categorize or classify the area in a more general context that would allow developers and potential bidders to have a little bit more of an open canvas, if you will, to propose to council through the bid process. And therefore, we would suggest that the configuration you see here be left as is, but rather drop a layer of urban ag on top of this configuration, which would essentially remove the PUD designation. It is consistent with what you see across Robertson Road in that green area, if I remember correctly. And like I said, give the developers and potential bidders and so forth a little more of an open canvas by which to propose to the city council that would be not like what you see on the left hand of your screen, which is what we suggested the last time we met on this topic. And so we would suggest considering urban ag, let the private sector sort of dictate by way of what it is that they propose. We would still need to go through a new appraisal. And we believe that appraisal process would drive a different price point that also might be a little more encouraging for the private sector to bite on. So Liz or Craig, if I left anything out, is there anything you'd want to add? No? Okay. And so council, that's the current proposal, and we'd certainly be open to any questions that you might have.
Questions, discussion?
I don't have any questions. I just have some comments. I like this a lot better. I like the flexibility within that, and so I can get behind this.
I like this option a lot better because then they can bring council the options of what they're wanting to do instead of us zoning it for multifamily and fourplexes and things like that, and then getting into a situation to where it's probably not ideal for the roads and the traffic and things. So I think that this is a much better solution at the moment.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Very good, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, Carter, would that, I don't see on that description of the urban ag zoning, does that not allow any residential?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, it is accommodating of residential. Yes.
It does, okay. I wasn't seeing that. The description. It says,
On
Item number
page,
2.
on page 2 of the packet, it has permitted uses for urban agriculture.
yeah. It says,
On
Family-
page 3 is the list.
Mr. Mayor, if I might. Counselor Bond, under 1724-020, number 2, conventional site built, single-family dwellings and
oh, I
manufacturing.
see.
So that is a,
Okay. That was the long one, so it's throwing me off. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Very good.
I was looking for the word residential. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Are we all okay with going with the urban ag? Let's plan on proceeding with the urban ag.
Certainly, and just so you're aware, in terms of the process that we need to pursue, we would then prepare a public hearing with regard to this designation, which of course will come after we've established a public hearing date, and that would be subsequent to the appraisal, so that council has the intended value in mind as we go into this leg of the discussion.
Carter, I do have one other clarifying question, if I could. Does that preclude then like a twin home or duplex construction?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Councilor, we believe that that would preclude those types of construction models.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Are we still okay with having staff proceed with the timeline for the urban ag? Looks like we're still in favor of that.
All right, thank you so much.
So we will continue on with that. Looks like the next thing is the website status.
Thank you, sir. This too has been a conversation that council has been engaged in for quite some time. And as a matter of fact, much of the council's goals were organized around the notion of improving this means of communication with our public. If you'll recall, staff undertook a pretty significant focus group effort wherein we pulled in some of you, we pulled in members of the public, and if I remember correctly, we even pulled in some employees to participate in that research effort to bring about some of the direction we wanted to go that we presented sometime back in 23. I want to say the spring of 23. We gathered some feedback from you as a part of that meeting and put it to work to bring us to the point that we're at today. And our purpose today is to update you as to those activities, how we're doing, and what our plan is moving forward from here. And so if I could turn some time over to our engagement team to walk us through that evolution, I would certainly appreciate that.
Good evening, council, mayor, council. So you've heard us say, I have with me tonight Christopher Hudson from our public engagement team, Michael Sebchuk from our IT team, and we're the team that has been working on the website. You've heard us say several times that our website is the city's single most public facing tool that we have. With 690,000 visits to the homepage every year, I think we can safely say that. We did 3 focus groups, one with our citizens, one with council, and one with our employees when we were looking at what kind of changes we wanted to make to the website. So I think that one of your counselors will recognize her focus of what she said she wanted to see. And that's that our website should be City Hall at midnight. We should be able to find things on City Hall. So given the most public facing tool and City Hall at website, we went to work. Currently, we have 13,000 weekly visits to our website. 4,000 of those are unique visitors, and we have 464 pages on our website. The most visited page is the home page at 690,000, but the next most visited page is our utilities at 93,000, then trash collection and landfill at 25,000. The search, and you'll see that we added a new search bar on the home page, but that gets 20,000, followed by RFPs all the way down with, and those are our top 10. So how people are getting to our website. Mobile, about 334,000 come from phones. 9.3 thousand are coming from tablets, and 347,000 are coming from desktops. That matters because that's how we should be designing and how we should be formatting our website. We want to make it mobile friendly and tablet friendly as well as desktop friendly. So here's some of the improvements that we made. Our homepage design, we moved the search bar to the top, and you'll see that we have quick links in there, as well as right under the search bar, we have current, like quickly, or the most visited pages, or if we have an event going on with a specific purpose, sales and use tax was up, we had a link up there for that to get to the page. Right now we're working on Holiday Square, so that's up there. Usually we have landfill and the utility page up there unless we have something going on in the city. But we let down below that, we have most of our recreation and things to do, and then a news page at the bottom. But the big change was right there, how can we help you get where you go? The next thing that we did is we enhanced the utilities page. Before, when you went to the utilities page, it was hard to find pay my bill now. Now, when you go to the utilities page, it's right there. Click here, here's how you pay. Then we added, thanks to IT, resident access, which is now our real-time ability to manage our own utility account. The search bar. The search bar used to be a Google search, and we changed it and it's only a website focused search now. So it only searches the city's website. We added some site design changes with photos and mobile friendly features. And in the end, we've gone about as far as we can go with the provider, what we have. And so you saw in your memo, and what we're saying is that in order to have a citizen-centric website and to meet the federal requirement of an ADA-friendly compliant website by April 20 of 26, we're suggesting that we begin search for a new website provider. And that is the end of the presentation. We'd like to take questions.
Questions from anybody? Comments? Councilor Pacheco.
Yeah, the only comment is thank you guys for the hard work putting that in. It's such a important aspect of how we provide services to our citizens and the effective communication, how we can effectively present that, make it easy to and to be accessible is very important and critical to how we do things here. Thank you guys for the hard work.
Commissioner.
I appreciate you guys listening and then understanding kind of the idea of what's behind the focus group. So it is very important for people to be able to get in there and figure out what they want to do or pay their bills at midnight.
I'd like to say that as a user of it just last week, it was very easy to navigate. I had to go in and change over my utility billing thing to a different provider, and it was, I mean, it was relatively painless, so great.
Yay on
Very good.
resident access.
Councilor Gamero.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to concur with everyone. I think the website has gotten much better, at least during my tenure on council. So thanks for all the work everyone that's been involved has done on it. I'm having a hard time pulling out my packet, so I apologize if it's outlined in the memo, but other than the ADA accessibility, can you please remind me what the reasons were for seeking a new website provider?
So Michael, I would like to actually turn that over to Michael a little bit more than I can answer.
ADA is a big thank you, Mayor, Councilor. ADA is a real big component. There's actually federal requirements that are requiring ADA compliance by that April 2026. So that is one of our big driving factors. As was mentioned, the current provider, their priority is not municipalities. We are looking for a provider that does focus on municipalities. You know, one of my favorite things that I've been in search of is allowing people to sign up for notifications. Our current provider does not allow you to sign up for notifications, but if we post an agenda and somebody wants to be notified when a new agenda is posted, I'd like, you know, citizens to be able to sign up and receive those notifications for things similar to that. And then when we did some of that front page update about a year ago, this past year, it basically gave us a splash on the front of it, but we haven't updated the whole site for, I want to say 2018. So it's been a good 6 years. So those are some of the driving factors behind wanting to update the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions from around the table?
I just want to say, I really like that we have, now that you've redone this, is the access to like Holiday Square or events that are current, you know, being right on that homepage to get the community engaged more and to be able to see that. Because otherwise, I mean, I don't think they would find it or purposely go to events or something if they were there just to pay a bill, you know, so with an extra click. So I like having that wordage right there to how they can get more involved in the community. I love that.
Councilor Bond, did you have something?
No, thank you, Mayor. No, just to say, good work, team. I really appreciate the efforts.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So back to Councilor Gameroth's question about the provider step that we would be taking next. Are you anticipating that being an FY26 issue or an amendment issue? Or are we currently budgeted and you feel comfortable that we can move forward as soon as we find that partner?
Hi, Mayor, councilors. We wish that we had budgeted in FY25. Reluctantly, we did not. We're planning it for FY26, but given that we have to be ADA compliant by April 2026, we think that it's in our best interest and prudent to get going right now to find a provider and to try and make the changeover. We'll have to put out an RFP, do a search. So we have a little bit of time that we're going to have to spend in finding a new provider. The switch won't be as quick as we wanted it. And I apologize that we didn't have enough foresight to see that.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, so it sounds like we may need to consider this on an amendment basis.
Mayor, councilors, Mr. Manager, yeah, that would be our recommendation, yes.
And approximately when do you think council would need to consider that type of an amendment?
Michael?
It would be in the springtime.
Springtime.
That's, as Jolene said, we will need to do our research and then select a vendor. And then at that time, we would be able to bring that recommendation to council.
Mayor, councilors, Mr. Manager, I would suggest it be in the January budget amendment.
Okay, so we'll have a feel for what that amount would need to be at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
because that would give you ample
Perfect.
time.
Appreciate it.
That works for both of you. The January timeframe.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any other questions from council? We appreciate it. And the new website looks like maybe even I can figure out my way around it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're enhancing the ADA. Should be easier.
Should be, is that what you said?
Next thing on the agenda is the Recreation Center rental agreement. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. We have had a religious organization come forward and make a request as it relates to renting space at the rec center for their services and their use. This would be a new relationship for the rec center to be a participant in, excuse me, but not a unique relationship that the city has engaged in other facilities with similar organizations. And so while it may be new at the rec center, it's not new as it relates to other facilities that we have in our network, if you will. Nonetheless, we wanted to come forward and make you aware of this possibility, in that the agreement will, ultimately come to all of you for formal adoption and consideration. And so we invited Nick here to walk us through that discussion, answer any questions that you have, so that indeed we can prepare for your formal consideration here real soon. And so if I could, Mr. Mayor, turn the time over to Nick, that'd be great.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thanks for having me. And like Carter said, I just want to walk you through where we're at and hopefully answer any questions that you might have specific to Uncharted Church entering into a rental agreement with the Recreation Division for the use of the rec center. I have our recreation supervisor, Jennifer Harvey, back there too, if there's any other context she can provide. So we were approached by Uncharted Church 3 months ago, and they just simply asked the question, would there be rental space available at the rec center? So, and entering into that conversation, we started talks about what that might look like. Before we did anything, we presented that to the attorneys for their review before we initiated any more conversations. Quite honestly and frankly, this rental agreement fits in with a lot of our goals and aspirations to find longer term rentals and be more creative with the space that we have and more purposeful with the space that we have. This rental agreement would do a few things. First, the church would be utilizing the rec center during non-operational times. So it's not interfering with our current operations. They'd be doing their setup from 7 to 8 p.m. on Saturday nights. We're closed. And then church services and everything associated with church services would happen on Sunday from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. when the rec center is closed. They'd be utilizing the gym space along with our classroom space. And the rental agreement would essentially bring in revenue of just under $37,000 for our enterprise, which, like I said, this is just the start of some creative ways that we want to engage in the community. So any of you have any questions?
The only question I was going to have, and it sounds like you've already talked with our attorney about the old business, and I'm sure we'll get calls about separation of church and state, but all this is a business agreement for
Correct.
Space rental, and so
Absolutely.
we're good.
Mr. Mayor, that's exactly correct. And as long as we're treating them as any other potential commercial tenant, charging them fair market value, there's no legal issues. We would get into legal issues if we decline to entertain those thoughts of entering into an agreement based on the content of speech. Then we have some issues, but no, I've discussed it with Mr. Whips, and I don't see any issues.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Oh, very good.
Just wanted to get a little bit more information about how we arrived at the rate that we're suggesting. Since the rec facility does require a taxpayer subsidy, I want to ensure that we don't have any portion of subsidy that would be going to this particular private rental arrangement. So how can we be sure that we don't have any portion of that subsidy that's going into this particular agreement?
Absolutely. And this is a two-tiered approach. So we have standard fees that we charge per hour for our facility, from the gym to the activity rooms, and you can see all those in the Exhibit A in the rental agreement that you'll see. But the first thing that we did, and we do this for all of our user groups, is we took that hourly fee and then we applied a nonprofit discount to that, which once again, we do that for all of our users that approach us to utilize the facility. The second piece to that is we then took from what we do at the ice arena and we applied a discount for a long-term rental. Ice arena does the same thing, where we take that hourly fee, and if there's a certain amount of hours that a user is going to agree to utilize the facility, then we apply a discount there. So to answer your question, Amber, what we did is we took the hourly rate, used a nonprofit discount, and then in the agreement, the organization's agreeing to use at least 250 hours, which would then take another 15% off for the long-term rental agreement, which then brings us to that final cost that you see in the memo.
Thank you.
Counselor Jensen.
Thank you. So I'm assuming within that, then I think Amber, that question kind of answered what I was going for, because that's going to cover the heating, the lighting, the excess utilities that are going to be used during our off hours of the rec.
Absolutely. Now, they aren't being specifically charged for heating and things
Right,
like that.
right,
But in
right.
our evaluations,
It's included like a package.
Correct, yes,
Kind of deal.
yes.
Counselor Bond, did you have anything? Counselor Bond?
No, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty talking. Nope, no questions. Thank you.
I have one, sorry.
Go
One
ahead.
more thing. Just a little question here. So does the cities and the rec centers insurance cover their use, or do they carry additional
So,
insurance?
As a part of the rental agreement, and this is something that is put forward with all of our rental agreements, the
Mhm.
risk office has minimum standards for what insurance they have to carry, and they have to agree to carry that, which they have in terms of the rental agreement.
Counselor Gamroth?
Thanks, Mayor. All my questions have been satisfied, but I just wanted to make a note that I'm familiar with the organization. They've been sponsoring David Street Station activities on Tuesday nights. They were the ones putting up the bounce houses outside the Lyric on Tuesday nights over the summer. So I appreciate that they've been helping out at David Street, create more family-friendly stuff. They were slinging Copper Cup coffee a couple nights, and so seems like a great partner. Looks like a good business agreement, so looks like a win-win. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Sounds like we're good to go. Do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Very good.
I
Appreciate
have
it.
one more comment, Mayor.
Say again?
I have one more comment
Oh, go ahead, Amber.
for the record. It seems like everybody's comfortable going forward with it. I like the fact that it helps generate revenue, but I don't feel particularly comfortable hosting any sort of church service at any of our government buildings. So I would thumbs down it if I was there, not because I don't think they would be a good partner or because it's good revenue. It just makes me feel uneasy at that type of use. So I'd say the same thing, because it's an actual church service, not some sort of social gathering or more recreational type of thing. So it doesn't feel particularly good for me. So I'll just make that note for the record. But I think it sounds like council is comfortable with it. So
Well, it falls under the
Appreciate your
first-
comments.
Isn't that the First Amendment that they can use, Eric?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer that. Yeah, I think denying them based on the content of the speech would create some legal issues with the First Amendment. Understand Councilor Pollack's comments certainly, but that would lead us down the path, I think, to have some legal issues. Certainly happy if there's desire going forward to speak more fully about that. But given the fact that we're treating them the same as any other potential tenant, if you will, I think we're on solid legal ground.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Are we all okay with moving forward with the contract? Looks like we will move forward with the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, we're down to the deployment of the opioid settlement funds.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The council and the county commission have actually been visiting about this item for quite some time as well. And this is with reference to the settlement funds that both the county and the city have been receiving now for approximately 2 years. Last I checked on the whiteboard, we've received somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 by way of these settlement monies. We do anticipate that more are forthcoming, albeit the settlement is really unclear as to how much and when and by whom those settlements will be tendered. What we have been able to establish, at least in principle, is the idea that if we are able to combine our funds with those that the county receives, we would be able to work a little harder, if you will, in terms of carrying out the directives of the order that makes these funds available. And that is mostly in the form of helping to deal with some of the crisis scenario that has come with an overprescription, if you will, of opioids in our community, and the addictive nature that those kinds of dependencies can create. And certainly, as it relates to the order that these settlement funds were made available, there's some real obvious guardrails that we have to be aware of and follow as well. The hope is that both the city and the county can come to an agreement with respect to A, combining those resources for uses that would be consistent with the order, and B, doing so with the oversight of a joint committee that would be put together both from the city and the county in order to be the city and the county's emissary, if you will, an oversight agent pertaining to a potential partnership with a vendor who has expertise in these services in this field. To date, we have not tendered language for the county or the city to consider. And so this is technically our first attempt to run some draft language by you to see what you think as it relates to the elements of that relationship in the way in which we may have captured it in the language of your draft agreement that's in front of you. So our hope is that tonight we can evaluate this relationship a little further, find any vulnerabilities that you see in the language, and take that feedback and try to perfect what it is that we've put in front of you. And of course, work with the county in tandem with this discussion to see if we can't come to an agreement before the end of the year, so that when council appointments are made to committees and so forth with the new council, this committee would be included in that process, and some of you would be appointed to that oversight function, and we can hopefully move forward with relationships with vendors and deploy funds in such a way that we hopefully can start helping people in our community here. So in many ways, this is a first step in moving towards that end, although you know that we've been talking about this for quite some time and are finally to the point where you can look at some language.
She's here.
So did Evansville and Barnon and Mills receive money, or was it just Casper and the county?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, it was City of Casper and Natrona County are the only two entities in the county that receive money.
Councilor Gamroff.
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is we received 1.2 million thus far, with some more to be expected.
Mayor, councilors, yes, that is correct. We did just receive a fairly substantial tranche about a week and a half ago, and so the updated number is 1.196 million, as reflected in the memo.
Thank you. And the county, do we know what?
It's roughly the same, might be slightly higher.
Okay. So if we were to collaborate, we're looking at $2.5 million or so.
That's correct.
One last follow-up if I could.
No, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. You're good, Kyle.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. My question is, we put out an RFP for this funding to be utilized. If we don't receive a proposal that we feel like kind of checks the boxes that we're looking for to, use this funding in the most effective manner, are we obligated? We're not obligated to accept any of those RFPs, right? We can, if we don't get any that we like, we can reconsider, or we have alternative paths, or what does that scenario look like? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, that's a fair question. And what I would say is, if indeed the council is comfortable adopting the, sort of the task force model, the committee model, a lot of that thought and evaluation and consternation, if you will, over the RFPs that we receive or whatever, as a joint effort, would be done at that task force level with a joint recommendation to both the council and the commission to consider. And I do mean consider, because at the end of the day, despite all the work that the committee may do at that level, the council or the commission may not necessarily agree with what it is that the ad hoc group is bringing forward. And so, yes, I do think the council would have the opportunity to reject the recommendation, but it would be done on the heels of what we hope would be a great deal of work done at the committee level to tender whatever recommendation it is that they bring forward.
Thank you.
Mayor.
And I think that's kind of summed up. If you look, now therefore the parties agree as follows. Pretty much A, B, and C pretty well cover what you were asking about.
Sorry, where are you at, Mayor?
Oh,
Page 13, 14.
I think it's page 20 of our packet.
You all said all different things.
It's on, I have it on page 14.
All right.
Okay.
Mayor, if I might give a little more detail.
Go right ahead
Council.
while he's trying to find what I referenced.
So back in February, you may recall, I had presented kind of an update or status report in a work session. And so some of the documents you see here were presented then. So there's a draft RFP that was worked several years ago, and it's included again, just for a frame of reference. I think most would agree that in the time since I was drafted, there's been a lot of new thought around how to utilize these funds. And so that's really just a placeholder to show where we have been. I think that if council is amenable to the task force idea, that can certainly be reworked. To the mayor's point, in the proposed memorandum of understanding, and I have it marked as page 29, which is probably different than everybody else's, but in recitals A, B, and C, it kind of lays that out, that the proposal would be that the working committee, which would be comprised as proposed of 2 counselors, 2 commissioners, and then a mutually agreed upon 5th party, they would make those proposals, and it would be up to council to either accept or reject. So you would have that flexibility, certainly not locked into any specific funding mechanism, but I would concur with the city manager that the idea would be that heavy lifting would be done in that smaller committee. I'll tell you that this was kind of a core that was started here, and then the commissioners have made some tweaks. We made some tweaks back. So this is kind of the latest iteration as of Friday. I believe my office is comfortable with it from a legal standpoint. I think the county is too, and so this is really for your perusal and digestion to say yay, nay, or are we totally off base?
Thank you. Page 29 is what I was looking
That answered actually all my questions,
Okay.
believe it or not. It was perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns, comments? Counselor Bond?
Mayor, thank you. Just a question. I have, there's a lot of very complex language in that page on strategies, the Exhibit A. I don't know, Eric, do you know what that, there's one that said SIBT. It's an acronym for something, but I can't quite figure out.
Mayor, Councilor Bond, I don't know. I can tell you if
Okay.
that's in the RFP, that was something that was done collaboratively with Anna Kinder, Christy Oster, folks from the Mercer House. So people that actually practice in this field and are
Okay.
way more knowledgeable than I am. And so I can't speak to what those acronyms are, but
Okay.
I'm sure they can.
Okay. Well, I just, other than that, I just wanted to say I appreciate the work and appreciate that this is moving forward, and I think it's going to do a lot of good, and anxious to see what funding proposals come forward. So thanks again for the work.
Anybody else have comments? Yeah, Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. Only comment is that I'd like to express advanced interest in serving on part of that task force as one of the 2 council liaisons.
We will take that up after the straw poll.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments? Are we all okay then with moving forward with the MOU? Looks like we're good to go.
Well, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the absence of any corrective language that is being tendered or whatever, we will hopefully be able to move a lot quicker in terms of getting a formal agreement in front of you here before the end of the year. So thank you for that, and we will do just that.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like massage therapy ordinance updates. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. As you are all aware, we had received some input from the massage therapy community some time ago, indicating that there may be some challenges with the current body of law on this topic. Certainly the clerk's office would concur, as in Amanda being the city clerk and one who has to evaluate these applications most typically. She has been working with the attorney's office and with the chief in terms of some suggestions that maybe council would consider or could consider. And indeed, we believe that there are some things that council may want to address in terms of making this more appropriate for use, not only by staff, but also by the massage therapy community. The clerk here, Amanda, is ready to walk you through some of that discussion, as is Mr. Nelson and Chief McFeeters. And so we are all here available for your questions and discussion tonight, with the hopes that you will allow us to move forward with some changes and then bring forward, of course, those changes in a draft that you could consider in a formal way on the floor, probably more towards the turn of the year. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could defer to Amanda to walk us through the beginning portions of this, that'd be great.
Mayor, council, as city manager stated, city staff, including Carla Mills, our licensing specialist, chief of staff, city attorney, and chief of police, have met a few times to review possible amendments to the municipal code pertaining to massage therapist permits and massage therapy establishment licenses. So for a little history, in 2020, City Council began considering implementing permitting and licensing for massage therapists and for the establishments, and ultimately adopted an ordinance at the end of 2020. The goal at that time was to help legitimize the massage therapists and to ensure that only those individuals who had the proper training and qualifications were able to practice in our community. The state of Wyoming does not have a state licensing board, and so that is why we stepped into that role as the city. In the past few years of issuing these licenses and after reviewing the ordinances, staff has some suggestions that we think could help streamline the process and also help my office with clear and objective requirements to ensure that those original goals are being met. So there's two different types of permits and licenses. So there's the massage therapist permits, which are more like a professional license. Staff would propose a couple of alternatives to the NBLEX, which is the most common examination for massage therapists, and also to consider adding proof of certification by another state's licensing board as an acceptable alternative to providing proof of training and examinations. And then we would also propose that we change the permit term to be in line with our other businesses affecting public health, which is July 1st to June 30th of every year. Right now it's 2 years from date of application. So there's some issues with tracking and making sure that people are renewing their permits because they're all at different times during the year. In addition to the massage therapist changes, we also looked into possible amendments to the establishment portion of the code. Some of those changes outlined in the ordinance would be adding operating hours, requiring that in-home establishments have to meet home occupancy requirements as outlined in the city code. And also, after discussions with the county health department, they indicated that they would be on board with helping us with inspections for those, and we would propose adding those health inspections. And then if council was to be willing to change the permit and license terms, we would also propose just changing the fees to align with that annual license as opposed to every 2 years. So basically, we would propose a $30 fee for massage therapist permits and a $50 massage establishment license fee, which is half of what it is now. So basically, over the 2-year period, it would remain the same. And that's all I have for now, unless the chief or Eric want to weigh in.
Mayor, council, I think our city clerk did a good job at giving kind of a high level overview. When we started to really look at this, what we realized is we didn't think that it was meeting the objectives of the city when this was enacted back in 2021. And as you'll all recall, that was, of course, in the height of COVID. And so there are lots of different moving parts. And so certainly it's understandable that there may have been some kinks that weren't ironed out at the time. So with the items that Amanda pointed out, those would be some, I think, simple fixes that would, allow a little bit more efficient implementation of the ordinance, and also give the city the ability to regulate where we see, health and human safety issues, where perhaps we don't have that right now. I did have a discussion with Ms. Anna Kinder at Natrona County Public Health, and they are on board to participate. When looking at Cheyenne and Laramie County, it does kind of flow through their health department. And so we're looking at items that we can maybe take from their ordinance and resolution and incorporate them into ours. Mostly the way I'm looking at it is to how to make this easier to read and more understandable as well for the general public. And I can't confirm this, but I think the health department may potentially approach the county commissioners to make it countywide, which I think makes more sense because, we're Casper and we don't want to push the folks that we really want to push out of business into the neighboring communities or into the county. So perhaps a more holistic approach countywide makes some sense as well. So I think we've made some good progress, probably not quite to where we need to be in order to bring something polished before you next week. But if council is amenable, we'll continue to work on that. And as soon as we feel like we have a good product to bring forth, then that would be our intention. So.
Did you have any comments, Chief?
I think it's been very well covered. Thank you.
You bet. Just wanted to make sure. Comments?
Mr. Mayor, if council is comfortable with us moving forward and so on, then that's, we're ready to do that if all of you are.
Mayor, Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilor
I
Bond.
do have a couple of questions if that's appropriate now.
Go for it.
Okay. First question is, I noticed in the proposed ordinance, it mentioned complete, graduation or completion of a program for massage therapists from a massage therapy school. Are there, I'm just wondering, it didn't stipulate, a, licensed or certified or accredited massage therapy school. I wonder what those are. And if that, if that would be an important stipulation. I mean, did Joe Blow open a massage therapy school? And I don't know. And say you completed the course, or I just wonder if that's how stringent those requirements are for the actual massage therapy schools.
Mayor, Councilor Bond, I'll take a stab at that, and then I'll ask Amanda if she has anything to add. I think that's a little bit of a challenge. In essence, what we're attempting to do is implement what typically would be a statewide licensing kind of regime on a municipal level. And I think that staff has found that it's very hard to verify. There aren't, national accreditation standards necessarily, and even when certain schools are potentially accredited, trying to verify it is very administratively cumbersome.
Sure.
And just hard to do. And so I don't know, Amanda, if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah. So state licensing boards do have ways to evaluate curriculum to ensure that you have so many hours of anatomy and physiology and all of that. We don't really have the expertise or the willpower really to do that. Like, we just don't have the expertise in our office. And so I think we have tried, but a lot of these schools are closed. Many of them, all we can really do is Google. I've talked to other municipalities who have similar ordinances, like in Cheyenne, and they also have issues with that, verifying the training. And I think that's one of the justifications for maybe focusing on the testing and making sure that that part which is objective is being met. So we do still require the certifications and graduation certificates, but it is hard to verify whether or not it's really qualifying or not.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. And then my other question is about the annual renewal of the license, which requires a background check every year or annually. Is that pretty consistent, would you say, with other states and communities in terms of license renewal for massage therapists?
Yeah, most do require background checks. That is something we wanted to keep in annually. I think Chief of Police wanted to maybe speak on that a little bit.
Mayor, Council, I just did want to respond on that. That was something that we gave some strong consideration for, but things have a habit of changing, and we felt it was important to maintain that annual need to kind of refresh our knowledge on who we're licensing, who we're giving a stamp of approval to operate within our community. So, for example, people can, let's personalize this in a way that you can picture. You wouldn't want your chief of police to unknowingly get arrested for DUI in another community or solicitation of prostitution, but those things happen. And so we would want to be able to know that and do that annual evaluation, just a quick check to make sure that everything's on the up and up as we're protecting our citizens and accomplishing the mission of what this ordinance was intended to do, which was to legitimize the professionals that are providing this medical service in our community and mitigating the harmful impact of ones that are not legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it seems like a lot, but I think, you know, given the nature of the profession and so forth, I think annual is okay. And I am happy to see the testing requirement so if I understood that correctly, either the MBLEX or that other NCB, TMB, either of those tests would be acceptable. Is that correct?
Yes, so either of those two tests or a state licensing board exam. So there are certain states that do their own licensing exams, and those would be accepted as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Did you have a question, Amber?
I do, yeah. So there are quite a few elements of this that I think seem really good to me, particularly understanding the challenges you've had verifying credentials. I think finding more concrete ways to deal with that seems really sensible, and so I like all of that piece of this. Some of it is feeling a little red tapey to me as well, so I'm trying to figure out where do we strike the balance between making sure that we've done what we needed to do, made things easier for you, but not created additional burden for practitioners that ultimately doesn't lead to any positive change in the community. And so I think the items that are striking me that way right now, and maybe there are, you know, legitimate reasons for this, but to me, massage therapy, in terms of what the health department oversees, is a relatively low risk public health sector. And maybe Anna had other feedback for you there, but to me, you know, I wonder if it really rises to the level of something that they feel like there is a legitimate public health concern around, or if it's more a public safety concern, which is, you know, sex trafficking and all the other auxiliary things that we've talked about here. And so, you know, if we're trying to address a legitimate public health concern, then I can understand the need to involve the health department. But if it's mostly just to try to legitimize and prevent bad actors from charading as a legitimate operation, I don't know that public health is the sort of mechanism to do that, unless we feel like there's a public health concern. So maybe you've got information from Anna that could help me there.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor Pollack, I don't know, I have a lot of specific information other than when we looked at other regulatory schemes, the health department does play a role. And I think your point is well taken. You know, what we've found is at times we're unable to deny licenses to folks that we suspect are not legitimate, yet we're not able to issue them to those that we suspect are legitimate. So how can we make this more efficient? How can we make this more targeted so that it's addressing what the city deems to be the health and safety concerns? And I think that there is a public health component. I would certainly defer to her to speak more in depth, but what does that entail? Is that a one-time, you know, inspection at the time of initial licensure? Is it, you know, periodic expenses? You know, I don't know where that balance is at this point. And so I think that is still something that we're continuing to explore, and what that partnership might look like, and to gather that information. But your point is well taken. I don't think that any of us or any of the staff, you know, want to have regulations for just the sake of regulating. And so if it's not leading to the outcome that you know, we deem appropriate, then we really need to question why we're doing it. So point well taken.
Yeah, and I would love to hear more information from Anna or somebody at the health department about, you know, what they know about the field and where their concerns would lie, and like what, you know, what sorts of things they would be looking for in an inspection, and whether we, you know, feel like that's necessary to achieve public health outcomes that we're trying to achieve. The other bit would be I have some concerns around the notion of a clean bill of health and a physician's note. That feels pretty invasive to me, and I'm wondering, what do we mean by a clean bill of health that would qualify somebody to safely practice massage or not? Go ahead.
That was based off of Laramie County Health Department. They require that. I don't necessarily have a strong feeling for against that.
Again, unless we have good evidence that there are health issues that should preclude somebody from practicing in this profession, I would hesitate to gather that information, require that information from somebody unless we have a real concern that there's an issue with communicable disease or something like that. Otherwise, to me, that just feels like a hoop to jump through that maybe is not going to change any public health outcomes. I could see the purpose in a government issued photo ID for method of, verifying the persons and making sure that they're, who they say they are and all that sort of thing in licensure. But that last bit seems like, to what end? Is it just so that it's harder to get the license, or is there an actual public health concern that we need to attend to?
Go ahead, Chief.
Mayor, with your permission, I'm gonna attempt to take a stab at this. Staff, it is our opinion that the council had two specific goals when we undertook this several years ago. Has been well said in here is that we don't think that we're achieving the goals that you intended. But it has been our experience that the ones that are providing a professional medical service in our community, these are very small hoops that they're accustomed to for them to jump through. For the ones that are doing a disservice to our community, when we are in there and doing our investigations, we are seeing and experiencing things that causes us to think that this would absolutely be a strong component and needed component for us to accomplish both ends of the goals that we think we were given. So what you're hearing from me is that an inspection for sanitary conditions is a good indicator that that it's a squared away operation, that they are trying to achieve their reason for being and that legitimate purpose in our community. The need to make sure that that your medical provider that is doing skin-to-skin contact. Again, what we're trying to do is trying to use these things that are working in other communities, and we're trying to see if we can incorporate those here and be able to achieve those goals. So I think there is purpose in there. If you were present on some of our investigations, you would probably agree with me that some of these hoops are a critical component to achieve both goals, which is to reinforce the legitimate side, but also prevent tragedies and public safety concerns on the opposite side of that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So in the investigations you're referencing, are those investigations typically involving licensed practitioners or unlicensed practitioners?
Mayor, Council, great question. What we have found is that when we have become engaged, after there is good cause for us to be concerned, okay, this is not for the intended purpose. It has drifted in there, and our investigation has gotten us to the point where we're serving search warrants and entering into these buildings and actually sitting down with providers and interviewing them. What we're finding is that there's a clear-cut distinction between those legitimate ones and the other ones. It's to the naked eye, it's rather alarming. And I'm not sure that I answered your question, so please, if I didn't, repeat the question and I'll try to hone that in a little better.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we feel like there are people, if the primary issue is that there are illegitimate operations sneaking through and becoming licensed, and then you go later to investigate them and find that it's not a legitimate practice, or if mostly what you're investigating are unlicensed practitioners masquerading as massage therapists.
Thank you. I did not do a good job of answering your question, and I'm glad that you clarified that for me. We have found that the persons that we believe were maybe even victims themselves of a trafficking operation, that they had been able to be licensed, given the ordinance as it currently reads today. We were not picking that up. Even though members of staff in my department, in the city clerk's department, we're kind of cocking an eyebrow at it, and it doesn't feel right to us. The tools that we had did not prevent that from happening. So even though the illegitimate conduct was happening at the time of investigation, they were legitimately in our city with a permit to do so. It wasn't strong enough to prevent those things from happening.
Councilor Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is more so, it feels like the reason we're having this conversation is due to the absence of statewide licensing requirements. And I just Googled and see that we're one of only 4 states in the country that don't have statewide licensing requirements. And so I was just curious why we have not included that as part of our lobbying resolution package for WHAM to take up to the state legislature. Should we, looking for feedback from city staff, should we be more aggressive in advocating for that at the statewide level? And if so, happy to carry that banner.
Your city staff is 100% on board with this should be handled at the state level. And I thought it was 3. I'm surprised it's 4.
I thought it was 3 as well.
Yeah, our research believes it's 3.
3 in addition to us, so 4 total. It looks like Kansas, Minnesota, and Vermont, but again, Parson hairs at this point. But well, I guess in that case, when we have our next conversation about putting together our list of resolutions for WHAM, I would advocate that this be one of them.
Mr. Mayor, to piggyback off of that line of discussion, that absolutely is something that council can consider for their legislative agenda, the calendar of which is starting here very, very soon. So keep that in mind. I think that could be a very good suggestion.
Absolutely. Councilor Jensen.
I think I found my answer in this, under this exemptions, but I just want to present a scenario and make sure that it's covered or see what they have to do. But between the licensing with the individual massage person who's doing the massage therapist, if they are working inside of, say, a chiropractor's office or working for a doctor's office, or, you know, and are they covered even though they're not the ones, or do they have to get a license? I mean, I know like a chiropractor would be covered under their license, or if they were the ones performing the massage, or a beautician, like I see some of the exemptions here. But if it was like a freelance massage therapist who was working in that chiropractor's office or medical facility or whatever, do they need to get licensed, or does that working in that office cover them?
To me, one of the exemptions, like they work in like a physician's office, the establishment does not, but I don't, does the.
I'm just because the way that it was worded is like, if you kind of felt like if you are a barber or a beautician or a cosmetologist or a nurse, that those licensors, being that you already have that license to perform that duty, seems like it, but so that massage, if they're working inside of one of those buildings or for them.
Are you asking if the therapist has to be?
Right, would they be covered under that entity, under that business, or do they have to get a license on top of working? Yeah, I'm just curious how this is gonna play out in the real world.
Counselors, how we've done it so far is if they're under one of those exemptions, they can.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
You know, and I don't want to weigh in with Mayor, with your permission. I don't want to weigh in on something that I'm not. The intent still is for the providers to, you know, if you owned a chiropractor business, you know, and you wanted to contract a provider, I'm of the opinion that provider needed to be permitted in the city.
Yeah. Okay.
If your own staff is providing these services, I think it's covered. But if you're going to contract and bring in that third party to offer this additional service, as a contract employee, I think that person probably should be permitted.
I was thinking that's the way the ordinance was originally written, but yeah, we made sausage when we put this together, and we have eaten the sausage now.
Familiar
and we're
how
trying-
policies
And now
don't
we're trying to figure out if
carry
we
out
need
the
to
same.
change the recipe a little bit. It's kind of where we are at this point, to kind of put it in a little bit different context, but that's kind of where we are, is we did the best we could back when we put the original ordinance together, and we went through a bunch of these things about, should it be part of the health department, shouldn't it be? And so I think with COVID and with some of the other communicable diseases, and trying to make sure that they are following the cleanings, and look at when you go to the dentist and even your doctor nowadays, how much more of their equipment they cover and wear gloves and all of these types of things. And so I think some of these things, like the health department, making sure that they have a place that the client can go to the restroom if they need it, and it isn't trashed out with all of their teenage daughters' makeup and everything. And not to pick on the teenage daughters, the guys can be just as messy. So don't write me and don't send me emails, but I will apologize to the young girls in the community. But basically, I think that's a little bit of what we're looking for as well, is that in the last few years, we have become a lot more health conscious, cleanliness conscious than what we were when this was originally written as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I have another question. We were talking about the clean bill of health requirement. Would that be a requirement for the annual renewal to have that annual physician's clean bill of health?
You know, we're all looking at each other, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to jump in and say, you know, I think that's appropriate. I do think that's appropriate. Professionals have annual medical evaluations. Most of the people sitting in the room today have had an annual physical. It doesn't seem that oppressive to me, but it helps us accomplish the goal. I'll just keep reiterating, what we're doing right now is not accomplishing either side of this. And we're just looking for direction from you guys to take another stab at it, to see if we can fine tune this to accomplish both sides of the goal.
So, Chief, are you saying that that clean bill of health requirement is consistent with, like, say, a nurse or a doctor or sort of a nursing assistant or something that would have that same requirement, or?
Mr. Mayor, I freely admit I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone here. I don't know enough about their professions to opine much on that. What I'm saying is most citizens have an annual evaluation from their medical provider. It's just they're habituated to it. So I don't know if that's required for their profession or not, but I am believing that is not too heavy of a lift for a practitioner to say, hey, doc, just like I got to go in to get my allergy medicines once a year. It's the same thing. Hey, I've got this thing I need you to sign off on, and they can do that. Again, strictly an unprofessional, uneducated opinion.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So for Amber, so I think that most massage therapists or legitimate businesses want to operate within the law and things of that nature. I do have firsthand knowledge of a couple of them that it's questionable at best. And these are people that they bring people in through California every 3 months. They do not speak any English whatsoever, and somehow they've been able to kind of fly under the radar. So there are a few of those businesses still here, and the they're very shady. And so they're there for probably a pretty specific reason. And so, but they're coming under the massage therapist. And, you know, if that were my profession, I would not want to be associated with something like that, because you're a professional and you're trying to do a professional business, and to have the other side of it that could be misconstrued, I think is probably something that's very difficult for them to try to navigate. So I think it would be helpful to have some guardrails, but this is also to make it a little bit easier for the massage therapist, but also some teeth for the inspections and things, because some of these places do need to be looked at.
I think Councilor Pollack, you had another comment?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the intention, and I'm comfortable with the problem we're trying to solve. What I don't want to see us do is just make a license harder to get to try to solve an illegal activity. So the people who are following the law and trying to practice appropriately have to go through a bunch more hoops. And I want to be convinced, if we're going to do that, I want to be convinced that it's going to improve our ability to enforce on the problem that we're having, particularly in these areas of health. I think for me personally, before I would want the city collecting health information on people, I would want to have some legitimate public health reason and concern before we create that as a requirement, because I'm just trying to think of, you know, what might come up on somebody's physical that would preclude them from being a practitioner, and who is evaluating that. And I would want to make sure we're quite specific about, you know, what is it that a clean bill of health is, what does that mean? So I think we would need to be very specific about, these are the conditions that are not going to be approved, and it's because of these specific public health concerns that we cannot approve them. Otherwise, I feel like that's pretty, if it's going to, you know, there's a difference between getting a physical and submitting the results of that physical to a government evaluator and a government body. And so I think that we've got to be precise and not just take a sledgehammer to it. Like, I feel like we need to be a little more refined in that. And so I'd want to hear from the health department as to what the, in that case, what medical conditions would be of concern to them from a public health standpoint, that we could be a little bit more specific about what exactly we're looking for there, if in fact we think that there are things that would be revealed in a physical that we would need to know about before licensing people.
Mayor, councilors, I think we've got the message loud and clear. So I think what I'm hearing is, if we're going to come back with proposals, we need to have some data and some statistics to tie it to why we're doing it, and that there's got to be a rhyme or reason. I 100% agree, and I think that's part of the due diligence that we'll continue to do. And if we come back with a recommendation that we have health inspections, or, you know, require a clean bill of health, it's got to be specific, and it's got to be backed by either this is standard practice amongst the states or other municipalities, standard in the industry. And that shouldn't be too hard for us to figure out, because we are only one of 3 or 4 states without.
There's plenty of examples.
Yeah, and so I hear that direction, and I think we'll be prepared to present the case as to why we should adopt anything that we're proposing.
Yeah, great. And I think, you know, I would support Kyle's suggestion of pushing to advocate for this on the state level. I think that is a more appropriate place for it to land, and with entity that, you know, can manage it. So I'm happy to support an effort to lobby for that as well.
Randy?
I feel like the good news, Eric, is the words public health officer are all over this, and obviously our current officer is also an infectious disease doctor, so that ought to make it a little easier. But yeah, all of these health conditions are more than, obviously having sex with someone is a problem if you have HIV, but touching them, not necessarily the same case. So as long as we're absolutely making sure that these health restrictions are being reviewed by the county health officer, I would be a lot more comfortable knowing he gave you guys really specific guidelines, because when it comes to diseases like HIV, there's a lot of rules and legalities there.
Not only there, but TB's having to come back, and All that is a cough anymore. So
Well, yeah, you
these
could
start
have
to be the things, yeah.
hepatitis C is not something you're gonna give someone by giving them a massage. So, yeah, you just throw out the words communicable and it's concerning, but herpes is contagious too, but you don't want to not allow someone with a cold sore to be able to have a license. So when it comes to the health things, I think we need to be extremely careful.
Councilor Jensen.
I just want to say a concern that I have. I mean, I agree with the protocols. We should have some guidelines and a framework for the people who want to visit the massage, the legit, of the health concerns and everything else, all those kinds of massage therapists who are legitimately doing massage therapists. I understand there needs to be this, but my concern is that there's those seedy places that we're all talking about are still going to exist. It's not going to make them go away. They're still going to be here. We're just pushing them further underground. So either we regulate the seediness or how you're just going to keep on pushing it and it's still going to be a bigger problem later. So how do we, if you don't want them here, what do you do? Because they're still going to exist. It's just like the prohibition and prostitution. It still happens. It's just not blatant. So that's what I feel like is, this is all good and we want to provide a safety for those things, but when we're pushing them deeper underground, how is that gonna look? What is that gonna look like in public? And what are we gonna do about it? Just let it exist, just underground further?
No. This ordinance is trying to do that, but what you also have to understand is the legitimate massage therapist came to the city because the state.
I agree with all of this,
Okay.
don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's gonna make another problem too. We have to have this. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying we can't be ignorant and think that other problem's just gonna go away because we can make them have license in a clean facility
But we're trying to make it tougher for them to exist.
by pushing them further underground. That's kind of
And
what
we
I'm
keep
saying.
digging.
Yeah.
It's the best way I could put it. Would you agree with that, Chief? That if we push them further underground, we'll just keep digging?
Mr. Mayor, forgive me for stepping down.
Not a problem. We're good.
I don't, I'm never going to be able to remove all crime from our community. The men and women that are out providing public safety services are doing the best that they can. But when we push them into places where it is easier for us to call it what it is, that makes our life a whole lot easier. That makes the prosecution so much more easy. When they cannot rest upon, hey, I'm providing a medical service, because they are not permitted to do so. They're not trained to do so. They can't fall on that defense.
So just giving you a stronger way to
We
enforce.
get to call it what it is and we get to respond to it as it needs to be responded to.
Do you have another question, Amber? Or comment?
Not at this time, just
Oh, okay.
processing.
Are we willing to go ahead and have staff take a look at what these modifications would look like as a change to the ordinance?
With the idea of I think what Amber was saying, that if we can get some clarifications and some feedback on the data, kind of like what Eric was saying, I'd feel better with that as well.
Well, and I think that's all part of, I would charge staff with that as part of the process of going forward. So are we all okay?
Mayor.
Yes, Michael.
I'm on board moving forward, but just wondering I'm not sure if this was in the memo or not, but would the plan moving forward be to get input or gather a few of the community massage therapists to get their input in the development and drafting of this work?
Yes.
Okay. Well, basically, the ordinance that you see in front of you now was developed with the local massage therapists.
Okay,
And with the police department involved and city staff. So all of that was incorporated when the original ordinance was put together. That's why I said basically we made sausage using the existing therapists, our police department, the existing city attorney at the time. We have taken a bite of that sausage and eaten it for the last few years. And now we are deciding that maybe we need to change the recipe slightly to get a better product all the way around. So.
well, absolutely, I would agree with that, but again, just kind of, so in making those changes and those revisions, would we include the massage therapists and kind of drafting those and putting those into the ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I'll take the bait. Council. So not having been here the first go around, I think it is very difficult when you have lots of different people, lots of different ideas to have a kind of efficient, working group. The intent now is not to kind of burn it to the ground and start from scratch. I think what we want to take is what has been adopted and what was agreed to kind of in principle, I believe, several years ago, and refine it and really make it clear, easier to use, easier to read, easier to administer, more equitable, fair, potentially less costly. Certainly, when you look through it now, I mean, there's reference to the public health officer. So talking about health department involvement is not something that wasn't contemplated several years ago. All that being said, whatever we come back, and I'm guessing it'll be in another work session before we ever get to a first reading, that there will be a process of a public hearing, multiple times for public comment. And of course, council at any of those junctures can hit the pause button and decide to put another task force together. So that certainly was within your prerogative. I think from staff's perspective, as we've been working through it, our intent is not to come back with something so different that we need to bring everybody back to the table to reimagine it, if you will, that this is really clarification, a crystallization of what was envisioned back in 21. But
Absolutely, but however, I still am concerned that if we move forward with these changes in a vacuum without input from some local professionals and spend time in work session and then hit the public meeting and public comments and public hearing phase, and we're going to be blasted for, as Councilor Pollack said, busy work, putting in a lot of what they perceive as busy work or whatever, burdensome changes that seem like red tape, et cetera. I would just rather have that input from some of those folks as we're drafting, but then at the public hearing, where then we have to go back to the drawing board again and redraft the ordinance one more time. So just my recommendation.
Well, if you wanted to do something along those lines, I think rather than trying to gather, gosh, I'm trying to remember how many people we had at those meetings. 20 people maybe? We had between 20 and 30 people when we put this ordinance together. And what I would suggest is once we have what we are thinking are changes, I would send these changes out because we have the addresses of all of the licensed people, is to send these ordinances out to them, let them read them and give us feedback at that time, a written feedback, rather than trying to, because you get 2 or 3 that say, yeah, they're good. You'll get 2 or 3 that say, no, don't mess with it. So that's where you're going to be if you start trying to bring all of just hand-picking 2 or 3 people out of the massage community, is you're going to get yays and nays on every one of them, almost like what we've got around here. And so I think we need to wind up trying to let staff take a look at it, come up with a plan and then we can review it, but before we go to public hearing, send it out with a, for lack of a better term, a public comment period on it of like a couple of weeks and see what they come back with and then go from there. Rather than trying to reinvent it all again. I don't know how the rest of council feels about that idea. But yeah, having been through that the first time, it was quite an ordeal. Yes.
My suggestion is let's move forward with our plan that we currently have, with Amber's suggestions, going through that, and then let's start there first. And then we can go forward to say, okay, look, do we want to bring in any additional people? I think creating a committee at this juncture and doing that is probably not the most cost-effective way to move forward, because I think you're going to get everything kind of all homogenized. Let's wait, let's do this first. And then if we need to look at trying to do some type of a committee down the road or bring in some people to look at that, then I think that would be prudent. But I think we should take this first step and get this going first. That's my thought. It's up to the council though.
Leg cramp, sorry. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, do we have a massage therapist?
We got like 4 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that's kind of where I was coming from. I think that'd be a great idea. Rest of council on board with that?
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you.
Does that work for you?
Yes, sir.
Thanks,
Oh,
Chief.
very
Thanks,
good.
Amanda.
Absolutely.
I think we got a thumbs up from Michael, didn't we?
And I think too, should
Yes.
he said that the massage therapists that are out there, I mean, if they have opinion or think that we should be looking at something a different way, I mean, you always email us and let us all know too, your thoughts. And,
Oh, absolutely.
you know, there's always that option that we can put into work as we're discussing it.
Very good. Next up is the CBCD. No, not CBD. The CBC demolition and asbestos abatement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm glad I got a chuckle. Very good.
The Casper Business Center is, of course, as you know, the building that we anticipate turning into the headquarters for the police department and consolidating their services under one roof and having that efficiency benefit us for hopefully the next 40 or 50 years once we're done with this project. The first step in this project, however, has to be the mitigation with respect to the environmental issues that the building is struggling under right now. As you all know, we did a very comprehensive asbestos evaluation, and it came back to indicate that there was quite a bit of material that is embedded with asbestos and therefore needs to be mitigated and remediated before we can move forward with full-on construction and everything else. Certainly as it relates to retrofitting old buildings, particularly buildings from that time period, dealing with asbestos is not something we didn't anticipate. What we didn't anticipate, however, was how comprehensive this mitigation effort is indeed going to be. We're expecting that pursuant to the full alleviation of this issue for this building, we are probably best served to go ahead and continue, or I should say include, a demolition effort as well. Now, when I say demolition, that doesn't mean taking down the building. And what I mean by demolition is reducing everything to essentially the foundation and the superstructure of the building. And that, of course, will set up the next phase of working with this project very nicely, because all of the health issues that the building has will be dealt with and done and not be something we have to worry about again for hopefully another 40 or 50 years. The expense related to this effort, this phase of the reconstruction, is anticipated to be in the neighborhood, as you read in your memo, of $5 million, roughly thereabouts, under $5 million. And this also brings, by taking this step now, the added benefit of meeting our obligations with respect to a portion of the funding that we would be using for this, and its commitments through the ARPA program, and resolving those as well, which is in the neighborhood of $1.1 million, if I remember correctly. Once this is done, the construction phase can begin. So in tandem with this work taking place, we will be coming to you with strategies as it relates to bidding the actual construction portion of this project out, which we would like to do once this is underway. Your task force that you have set up for this purpose will be, receiving a number of strategies from us in order to make the dollars that we have set aside for the full reconstruction of this building be as well purposed as absolutely possible, so that we get the biggest bang for our buck, particularly in the face of these advancing costs that we have been experiencing over the last several years. The purpose of tonight's meeting, however, and this discussion really is to determine if we can get this first phase kicked off and underway in order to proceed through the latter phases. And so with that, if I could turn some time over to Mr. Brower to walk us through what that means exactly, beyond what I've just described to you, I would sure appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Mr. Brower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, city manager. Thanks. I think city manager covered it very well, very thoroughly. And so it's interesting here, when we did the asbestos study with R&R Environmental, we found that so many of these materials are intrinsic to the building components. They're caulking, they're adhesives, they're some minor insulation. And so it's not like it would be really nice if it was like, oh, in the bathroom floors, if we remove all the tile, all the asbestos is gone. That makes an asbestos abatement project really easy. But these materials, again, are just kind of intrinsic or embedded in the building materials. So in order to get the most bang for the buck, we're trying to combine the demolition along with the asbestos abatement. The demolition needs to be done in order for us to remodel the building and turn it into a functional police station. We've got to get rid of the carpet and the walls and the doors and all those components in there. There'll be some walls that are associated with the bathrooms that stay, but most all these walls on every floor are going to be removed. So it'll be kind of a concrete structure, if you will, with columns, and that'll be everything that's left. So there's value to the demolition, because we have to do that anyway. And there's economy of scale that goes along with doing the asbestos abatement at the same time as the demolition. And so that is our recommendation. Our best available information is this roughly about $4.8 million is my cost estimate for this. And part of the work includes our construction manager at risk, Sampson Construction, because they're going to kind of oversee the whole site, put security fencing around, provide for avenues for removing all that demolished material and probably taking a good portion of it to the landfill, hopefully a good portion of it for recycling, things like doors and other things that can be used, containing that asbestos containing material, encapsulating it and hauling it to our landfill facility. And so again, the project makes a lot of sense. It's the first step in getting this project moving, and it's a collaborative effort. R&R Environmental addressed the asbestos removal component of it. City staff worked with the architect to put together the demolition package, and then working with the CMAR to help with access and control of the building and removing that material, both demolished material and asbestos containing material, safely from the site. So with that, I would be glad to address any questions that you may have.
Vice Mayor.
Just one. Do you have an approximate estimate time that it would take them to do the asbestos removal?
We're optimistic. It's in the 2 to 3 month time frame for the asbestos abatement and the demolition. And it's really going to be a collaborative effort because the demolition contractor could be removing a portion, for example, the exterior sheetrock on the building. It doesn't have any asbestos in it. The insulation behind it doesn't have asbestos in it, but the glue that stuck the insulation to the wall does. So the demo contractor would remove the sheetrock. And then when it comes to the removing the insulation, that's where the asbestos abatement contractor would remove it. So they could abate all the asbestos that's contained. So it's going to be a very collaborative process from a demo and an asbestos abatement, but hopefully it's 2 to 3 months for the time frame for that.
As a follow-up, so if the asbestos, just because we've been waiting for this to get started and everything, so do we have a plan of as soon as it gets done, then we can start with contractors to start working on it? Or do we need to then put out another RFP to try to find those contractors for the completion of it?
Mayor, Councilor, excellent question. That's why we have the CMAR on board. So the CMAR will put out a bid package and solicit bids for subcontractors for the next phase of work that we're doing on there, which will be ostensibly the plan is, the core of the infrastructure, HVAC, plumbing, what am I missing? Oh,
electrical.
Plumbing and the core electrical. Yeah, so that will be done. So we don't have to put out another RFP. There'll be, a bid that's required by state statutes with it advertised 2 times, at least a week apart, and we'll solicit. It'll be an open bid process for the CMAR to get subcontractors to do that work.
Other questions?
I like it. This is part of the $20 million. I'm reading your financial considerations here in our packet too. So it's already in your ARPA funding.
Mayor, councilors, 1.1 million of this is ARPA funding. The rest is kind of a blend of CARES funds and other funds that make up that $20 million overall package.
We committed to this being the business. It's a step we've got to take, I think. So there's not much. Get it done. I like that they're doing the demo and asbestos removal simultaneously. So that's good.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add on to that real quickly, this project would simply not be available to us were it not for the dollars that we have sort of corralled and scraped together through the CARES and ARPA programs that came around during, of course, the pandemic period. I'm happy to report that only 1.1 million of that is needed to be spent by the time that this year ends, or at least under contract. The rest of it, however, does not have the same DNA, although it came through the same programs, and we will be able to apply all of that to construction activities once we get through this initial mitigation and demolition phase.
Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of on that note, I last week fielded some questions from someone about this project and found myself failing to recall many of the details. I wonder, do we have any sort of working document of some sort from a very high level view, this is not specific to just the asbestos abatement, but do we have some sort of overview of the Casper Business Center project, the total budget, kind of the funding that we've identified so far, what we've expended so far? Do we have anything like that just as a reference tool to be able to, help answer those questions and keep myself and the public in the loop on where we're at?
Right. Excuse me. We've been through this several times and we have several of those. We have another committee meeting on Thursday that we will be going over all of that. And I would recommend then that we potentially put out a new revised, whatever you want to call it, timeline, dollars, etc., after this meeting on Thursday, because we will probably be updating some of those things. Some of the biggest things is, we planned this project back pre-COVID with all of the dollars pre-COVID. Construction costs have doubled to tripled since then. So we are wading through all of that. We still have our 25 million that we started with that has been committed. But we need to figure out how we can best use that. Excuse me, can you go ahead?
Yes.
You know, kind of know where I'm
Yes,
headed.
sir,
I'm
I sure
losing my
do.
voice.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would say, once we're able to fine tune some of that information, it'll be certainly more informative once we clear our meeting with the task force.
Appreciate it. So we can expect to receive that in a future work session or a future information packet or something along those lines?
Absolutely.
Something along those lines.
Put it on the website.
That's where Pete needs to make his
With the
little
big bold thing.
self.
Any other questions or anything? Because I think what we're looking for is, if we're all happy with it, I think the contract for the abatement and demolition will be it on our next council meeting. Is that correct?
Mayor, councilors, that's correct, that authorization for that to go out to bid, and then we're bidding it fairly quickly.
Yes.
Make sure we get that contract, get that money encumbered before the end of the calendar year.
Absolutely. So we all, Mr. Bond? He left. Okay.
Let's, Juicy's no longer
Very
on the
good
call.
point. Very good point. Sorry.
Okay.
My mistake. Man,
Don't
he
turn,
decided to leave.
There's no way to hide
don't
in
turn
here
so
On his
red.
own.
Embarrassed him.
Don't turn so red.
No, I bet.
Okay, looks like we're all a go on the contract, so let's
Yes, sir.
get that going.
Heck, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This one is a much more simple discussion to have. I don't know how many of you knew this or not, but the Ayers Clock downtown has actually been in the ownership of the city now for roughly 10 years or whatever. The Ayers family donated that clock to the ownership of the city so that indeed we could, maintain it for posterity's sake and for the tone of the downtown and the environment and so on of the downtown. With the caveat, of course, included in the agreement, the donation agreement that came with the clock, that should there be a point in time where the family would like it back, particularly if the city has identified its maintenance as, somewhat of a hardship, that they would take it back, no muss or fuss, and indeed pay for its removal and so on, and be given back to the family, the Ayers family. After some looking into this and with the family reaching out to us, asking if now would be that time that the agreement anticipates, they basically would like it back. My recommendation would be, absolutely, let's let the Ayers family take it back. It's currently in a non-working order right now. They're not upset about that. They're not upset at the city. And we would agree that it is a maintenance issue that we'd prefer not to have on our docket, if you will. And so if council's okay with this, we would like to exercise that portion of the donation agreement pursuant to the request of the family to do so and get that clock back into their hands at their cost and at their request, as I've mentioned.
It's a relic. Is that the historic value of it now that they're not here? Is that kind of where they're coming from? I have a question regarding that, just because I don't know, maybe I'm totally off. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but wasn't Rotary involved with that clock in some form? It's a different clock? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't treading on other partners or something.
Yeah, that's a completely different facility.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a clock at David Street Station, which is Rotary. This clock is still in front of where Ayers Jewelry used to be.
Okay, all right. Yep, got it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, we have two that look similar.
I think it's a great family heirloom.
Yeah.
Probably deserves to be back with them.
Everybody in
If they
agreement
don't
with that then?
Want it here.
Okay.
Thank
Looks
you.
like let them have it.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Next is agenda review. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors, the grid document, of course, is attached for your perusal. As you can tell, there are a number of items that we view as being fairly timely that will occupy our meeting discussions throughout the year, the end of the year. We are a bit hamstrung, however, in that a couple of our work sessions fall very much uncomfortably adjacent to the holidays, to where we don't view Christmas Eve, for example, as being a real viable option for discussion with council in a work session. We would say that the 26th might also be one of those items, although it's not necessarily Thanksgiving Eve on that particular date. So our suggestion would be that the 26th and the 24th be considered for not meeting on those evenings. And so beyond that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be open to any questions or suggestions that we may need to consider for amending the grid document.
And the one thing that I would suggest probably with those things going along is, if you notice on the 19th next week, our pre-meeting would start at 5 o'clock instead of 5:30 to help us get through some of the things that we would potentially take up at like the 26th work session or someplace else along in there. So that is the other caveat that would go with those. So are we all okay with that, or?
I'm good.
I'm seeing bunches of thumbs up, so that we will plan on. So we will cancel the 26th and the 24th. Anything else you want to go over on the agenda at this time?
Other than to refer you to the back page, I always like to make sure you look at that. In that, if there are any items that are missing or haven't been docketed that you feel should be docketed sooner than what this suggests, please let us know and we will adjust accordingly.
Well, I think we've already got the second one under future regular council meeting items already on the agenda for the third. Leadership speeches, and then the exec is personnel. Isn't that when we're going to have the
Same night, yep.
Yep, so that particular item is already on the agenda for the third. And I believe, is it in the pre-meeting? Where is it? Someplace in there I'm looking, because weren't we going to go over the rules of engagement?
Should be on the 19th.
Is that on the 19th?
Yeah.
Pre-meeting on the 19th. Okay, there we go. I thought it was in there someplace. So,
right, yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
very good. So that should get us through that. And then, yeah, we'll go from there.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I actually have a question about council leadership. So it looks like on the 19th, we are reviewing the current resolution that we had, I believe we amended and kind of worked through last time around. And then no meeting on the 26th. On the 3rd, we have scheduled for council leadership speeches. Where am I overlooking the straw poll where we actually, is that one in the same?
That's in the executive session.
That's
At the end
right.
of the meeting.
To my dismay, I remember. Okay, thank you.
Nope, we're good.
Thanks for the reminder.
I'm the one that's supposed to forget
Can't believe you
things.
forgot.
Worth a shot.
Very good. Anything else on the
No,
agenda?
sir, no, sir.
Okay, then let's start around the table. Mr. City Manager. No. Mr. Pacheco.
I don't have anything, but I just saw that Matt Larson is here. Just want to welcome him and congratulate him on his win. So we've been looking forward to working with you. Thanks, Matt.
Counselor Jensen.
Gosh, I really don't have anything except for last week. I spent the part of the better portion, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I was on council, but in Laramie, or no, I wasn't. I was in Lander. Like, where was I? The other L one. No, in Lander, and so we spend a lot of time in cultural things is what our agenda was on. So we spent a lot of time on the reservation and understanding a lot of their viewpoints and got to tour around there. So that was fun, and spending some time in Lander. So, but that being said too, is next week I am taking a leave of absence and I'm going to go on vacation. So I will not be here. Hopefully, I just reviewed the agenda and it looked like there wasn't anything too nutty that I needed to be present for. So if that's all right, I'm going to go have a much needed vacation for personal time.
With vacations.
Son, I know, and I haven't in about 6 years, not left the country, and I am on this Thursday. So,
Enjoy your time.
thank you. I'll be back on the 23rd. So,
I think we will be able to
MIA.
survive.
I'm not taking any computers. If you have WhatsApp, that might work.
Very good. Councilor Pollack.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience as I zoomed in a little bit late. I was giving a presentation in Laramie, so dropped off right here. In fact, I don't have a ride if anybody would like to give me a ride home this evening. I just ran right in. So thank you for your patience. This was a packed meeting, so I was really trying to get here as quickly as I could. Nothing to report. I do have quite a few meetings coming up through the rest of this week and into next week, so I'll be prepared for some updates soon. Got to attend community band concert last night, Kelly Walsh. Free concerts. I think the next one is in April, so keep an eye out. Got a number of friends and former colleagues performing in that actually, so it was quite nice. I did some Veterans Day celebrations, and yesterday was Veterans Day, so that was a very nice way to mark that holiday as well. And I think that's all I have until next week when I'll have more for you. Thanks.
Councilor Haskins.
I don't think I have anything at all.
Councilor Bond. Oh yeah, he said he dropped out. Okay.
Yes.
Or
Okay.
Depending on who you ask.
Councilor Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a Jay's Boot Fund Foundation event last Thursday evening. It was a really good experience. Got to hear the story behind the creation of that foundation, learn about its purpose and goals and the impact it hopes to have. I believe they said that by the end of this school year, they were aiming to get a pair of boots on the feet of every local high school senior, which is a cool, admirable goal. At the event, everyone had to commit to spreading the word of the work that they're doing, which I'm doing now, and as well as making a call to someone to do a boot check.
Are you wearing boots?
I'm not tonight, no, unfortunately. You also had to commit to doing a boot check, which is checking in on people that maybe you haven't talked to for a while or people that matter to you, and just taking the time to do that. I did that as well, so that you all are witness to that. We got a sit rep report from Jody, our new shelter manager at Metro. Again, she's doing those, I believe, weekly. So I was like pouring over those numbers. Still a lot of pet surrenders, unfortunately, which is kind of a trend that started occurring pretty much since COVID. And she also expressed that a lot of microchip contact information is outdated. So even if you have your pets microchipped, if you've moved anytime since then, you should reach out and make sure that that information is current so that if you end up losing your animal, they can track you down. And then lastly, There will be one upcoming vacancy on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board beginning in January. Interested applicants should send their letter of interest to our Public Facilities Director, Zulima Lopez. I believe the deadline is this week, the 15th, so just a few days to sneak that in. And then also Planning and Zoning Commission is accepting applications for new members. Letter of interest can be sent to our Community Development Director by mail or to planning@casperY.org through email. Deadline for that is December 4th at 5 p.m. Anyone that follows council knows we rely heavily on the work of our, partner organizations, especially like Planning and Zoning Commission, when we have those sorts of issues in front of us. And so I hope we get some good candidates and hope people consider applying. That's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have anything.
And actually, I don't have anything either. I've got several meetings and functions coming up over the next week, but not much this last week. So I think we're done. We appreciate all of you for coming.
Amber, you need to write.
Got me.